All right, we're now out of executive session. No decision was made in executive session. We do have a matter, though, that needs to be brought before the committee. And we'll need a motion on this, but perhaps, Counselor, you could help articulate the language of the motion.
It would be a motion to enter into a settlement agreement with Joan Waters and Waters Edge.
I think it's frozen.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up documentation because I want to get the right wording in here. It would be a request for a resolution to enter into a settlement agreement for a just compensation and acquisition of certain property that's located in the town of Bolton on tax parcel ID number 171-16-1-3 with the property owner, which is the estate of David L. Waters and Joan A. Waters, as well as the business of Waters Edge Marina for the purchase of a portion of the property as well as easement rights on that property in an amount not to exceed $100,000.
This is to facilitate construction of the retaining wall.
Yes, it's under the eminent domain procedure law for the state of New York to permit the county to reconstruct a retaining wall along County Route 11. What's the number on it? Okay, what's the name of the,
Sagamore Road.
on Sagamore Road?
Mr. Bruno on that motion, Mr. Merlino on the second. Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And now let's move right into the other matters. Kevin, what's the next
So the
item?
first thing we have on there, under action agenda items, new business items, is a request to amend the county budget. This is to amend the 2024 budget for Warren County Industrial Park sewer, water, and sewer taxes, sewer rent in the amount of $7,718. And we're gonna up the appropriation code as well as the revenue code, and you'll see because it's based on increased maintenance costs.
Okay, let's bring this to the floor for consideration. Mr. Strainer on the motion, second. Mr. Merlino on the second. Thank you, Gene. Any further discussion regarding the request? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I carry. Next item.
All right, I know we're running a little bit behind, but I've got a lot to talk about regarding our emergency declaration project updates. As you all are aware, December 18th, we had significant rainfalls, and we've had a couple since then as well. We had failures on 4 roads, 2 pipes on one road in Bolton, another road in Bolton, as well as Call Street in Lake Luzerne, Queensbury area, and then Palisades Road up in the town of Horicon. Each one of these was a culvert, washout culvert failed. Trout Lake Road was a 36-inch corrugated metal pipe. We lost a portion of the road because of the amount of water that came down through. We put a new pipe in place, and it was a 4-foot pipe. And that project is completed. We had our emergency contractors come in and do a lot of this work, so that was done by Luck Brothers. We currently have 2 contracts going up on Bolton Landing Riverbank Road, which is County Route 11. That's the main road off of exit 24 into Bolton. We have 1 pipe that is approximately 22 feet deep and another pipe that's about 16 feet deep, maybe a little bit more than that in spots. Both those pipes have failed. Peckham's is working on the pipe up by Valley Woods Road, and then the other pipe is being worked on by the Kabricki Construction. We had already had an estimated cost associated with the 5-foot pipe up on County Route 11. We were just trying to get through the permit process with DEC, so we knew that was an issue pipe already. We had already had an estimated cost, almost $750,000 from Kabricki to do, or from Peckham to do that work. The Bolton Landing Riverbank at New Vermont Road requires us to put in a box culvert. That's going to be a 10x6 box culvert. Again, we work with our emergency contract. Kabricki is one of those as well. They've started the work, and Fort Miller has already started. Actually, they're probably almost 90% through with making the box culvert up. That project's going to be approximately $1.5 million. Hartman Loop, that was the one in Call Street Hartman Loop, the one in Lake Luzerne. That was a 30-inch reinforced concrete pipe that failed. We put in a 5-foot pipe in place of that 30-inch. The approximate estimate of that one is $250,000. And then Palisades Road, right now I'm grasping at straws to what it's going to be, because based on DEC's regulation guidelines, that almost looks to be a 25-foot bridge from the existing culvert that exists there today. So that could be somewhere in the vicinity, estimated right now, at $2 million. So with that being said, that's a significant amount of money going to these emergency repairs. We've provided all those numbers to OES. We have reached our threshold regarding our county, but statewide, there's a threshold of approximately $37 million. I don't think that was hit. So we most likely will not be seeing any money from FEMA for these projects. I don't even think any of the other towns who had any damage, it would help out. It wasn't a statewide, it was in certain pockets in the state that it hit hard. I think in Essex County, I talked to my counterpart up there, they had it in Mariah where it hit them really hard, but they might have had $1 million worth of damage. So it's very tough to hit that $37 million that FEMA requires for us to get some emergency funding. So with that being said, last year I had transferred money into my bridge and culvert capital project. A portion of that money, approximately $400,000, was going to go to the County Route 11 project eventually when we got the permitting through DEC. And then I had another 400,000, give or take, in there that was going to be for other culvert projects throughout this year. That's the money that I'm currently using right now to pay some of these contractors, but that money is going to go away fairly quick. And again, a portion of that money was devoted to other projects that I was going to have this year. So based on that, the estimated storm damage repairs are somewhere in the vicinity of about $4.55 million. And the existing money that I had in bridge and culvert to go to that was approximately $464,000. So right now I'm currently short about $4,086,000. I also submitted a budget last year for $5.34 million, $348 million for road projects. With that being said, we only received $4 million in our budget for those road projects. So I can certainly cut out projects, but I'm coming back to the committee to ask for the funding to fully fund those projects for 2024. For the newer supervisors, I've discussed every year of if we don't have a certain amount of money in my budget, we're never catching up with these roads. I was asked the question in budget, I think by our treasurer at the time that, I had said a couple of years ago, at a 5-year projection, $4 million per year. Sure, that was a number that I could give as an estimate at the time, but with inflation and cost, that's increased. So that's where we came up with the budget number of 5.348 for this year. The other thing that I didn't receive full funding in during the budget was for my transfers to capital project. My funding request for transfers to capital project was 2.2 million, and I received 639,000. So there was a shortfall of 1.5 million. That's money that goes to any of our federal aid projects. I have a list of projects moving forward for this year, for the federal aid projects, that's the capital that I need, the local match to fund those projects. If I don't, then those projects get put on hold, and when they get put on hold, DOT will pull the funding from me. So with that being said, altogether, I guess I will say with the storm damage, the 2024 road projects, as well as the transfers to capital projects, I'm $7 million short for 2024. And again, I don't think, I think I've talked about this in the past. I did a culvert assessment program that started last year. We had some funding through Beth Gillis and the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board to do a certain amount of culvert assessment, and that was in the Lake Champlain region and watershed. And then we took it upon ourselves with some money that we had to have the same consultant do a look back or a look at the rest of the culverts that I own throughout the county on county roads. With that being said, I also said last year that our culverts, most of them are in the ground, especially the corrugated metal pipes, are in the proximity to 40 to 50 years old. It's coming to a head that we're going to have to start replacing these. So I haven't gotten the report yet, final culvert assessment report. They should be wrapping it up fairly soon. That'll give me a better picture of what culverts within the county that are going to be in dire need of being replaced.
That's coming off of major emergency work in Queensbury. What was the dollar amount on that?
That was somewhere in the proximity of like 1.8 to 2 million dollars, and that was for the Bay Road project.
Bay
We also
Road.
had the County Route 2 project for the culvert that collapsed over there. And again, we're seeing more and more of these, let's say, 500-year storms. And with these 500-year storms, we're seeing that our pipes cannot handle that influx of water or have deteriorated to the point that they need a replacement. The one at County Route 11, I can tell you, is the pipe and we knew, again, we were trying to get it replaced. But with that amount of rain and the volume of stormwater that came down through there, we were concerned that we were going to lose the entire road. And that would have been a significant issue for the town of Bolton. As it is, we caught it before we lost that entire load and before, based on public safety, someone got hurt. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I'm going to look for the committee to, I guess, to some degree, make me whole so we can get this work done. Now, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, $7 million. But again, if we don't stay atop of this, I'm gonna have many more issues beyond this. So
Mr. Bruno,
What was the money? What did we bond last year? 6 million or so?
2 years ago, we bonded that amount of
2
money,
years ago?
and that was for road projects that we were doing previous. In fact, the last one to be done on that is Supervisor Bean's project, which is Main Street, which goes out to bid Monday. So they'll be performing that work this spring.
But now we're looking at another 7 million. On top of that, 6 months, 2 years ago.
I think County Route 11, you're talking about the bypass points are on the south, Diamond Point Road.
Mhm.
And on the north, you actually have to weave your way through on Alderbrook Road, or go to Ticonderoga. I mean, you're talking about the loss of a major road of the network.
And Diamond Point Road is one of the roads to be reconstructed this year.
In other words, if you think of the Northway and Route 9N kind of in parallel, that's a big, big detour. Big detour.
I can add that I'm really concerned when we get this assessment back is we're gonna find many more problems than what I have, than what we just currently experienced.
Let me just continue if I may. The culvert Call Street, was that not part of the reconstruction that we just completed?
No.
Okay.
No.
I did send to Kevin the that there were public bids for that allowed for piggybacking for lining work, sewer lining work and culvert lining work and other types of lining work from other municipalities. But we were having some pushback from DEC relative to, you might want to get into that a little bit.
So I'll touch base on that real quick, and I actually have it in front of me. So a couple weeks ago, I was given a technical guidance that DEC is looking for comments on it. And basically what it affects is it affects every town, city, county, state highway department based on new regulations that they have for streams. And being in the like their water quality permits and such, which is going to have a significant impact on any of us who do any type of culvert or bridge work. Right now, they're hanging their hat a lot on this 1.25 bank full width scenario for replacement. I mean, if I have something that say is a 10 to 12 foot pipe, and they're going to this 1.25 bank full width, and they're looking at 100 feet upstream and downstream of the bridge or the culvert or whatever it may be, some of these culverts get pushed to a bridge. And Culvert, New York right now, if anybody here, and I'm not sure if anybody has any applications in the Culvert, New York right now, but the max that Culvert, New York will provide is $1.5 million. We had that on, when we put in for Culvert, New York for Corinth Road at Clendon Brook, the max was only $1 million. We are already, based on what DEC is requiring us, we are already at almost $2 million. So with this guidance, with these regulations, it's costing us, and there's no funding through DEC.
You might, I don't know, everybody here knows, I know and you know it, but what's the 1.25 bank full width? You know what that,
So basically, they look at your high water mark of the bank, and it's, again, it's upstream and downstream of whatever structure you may have in place. Based on that, and again, they make the determination of what that bank full width is. You can provide engineering backup to it to show this is what it is. Now, I'll give you an example. Trout Lake Road in Bolton, the pipe that we lost, the inlet side of it is a marsh wetland.
Mhm.
Their regulations determination is that marsh and wetland, which spreads out to hundreds of feet. That was putting us into a 40-foot bridge where a 3-foot pipe was in place. So that's, so this guidance that I'm talking about right now, there is public comment on this. And again, they didn't pass it out to anybody except a few people. All the people that it affects, towns, counties, villages, cities, none of them received a copy of this. So I was at the Saratoga, or I was at the New York State County Highway Superintendent's conference last week. We brought this up and we, through our listserv, passed it out to every county so they could comment on it. And I would ask, and I can certainly pass it out to all the towns, get your highway superintendents to look at this because it's going to have a huge impact. And the conversation we had at the highway conference was, the bottom line is what's going to end up happening is Joe, highway superintendent, is going to say, you know what, I don't care what DEC says, DEC says I'm going to do what I want. A lot of the guys at the conference said, I'd rather get fined. I could pay the fine and just do the work. So
We ran into that on Potter Hill Road, with the bank width. We had a culvert there. We were going to put the largest, I think they call them low profile squish culverts there. They wouldn't allow it, and they wouldn't allow us to put a culvert side by side. So we ended up having to put a bridge, an actual culvert bridge in. The cost went, you went from this to
that's what happens with
this.
this regulation. That's the most onerous part of that whole thing, is that 1.25 bank full width requirement. it pushes a lot of these culverts right off the,
You have to remember too, even at County Route 11, the county's changing its culvert at County Route 11. Well, the first culvert that water goes to is town culvert on New Vermont Road. So now the question, Kevin's, we're evaluating that now in terms of the adequacy, because what happens with all of this drainage is like a domino effect. And it crosses jurisdictions, so it's you get the state or this county doing something over here, but it could affect any number of towns, depending upon what the waterway is, what the drainage area is. So it's the trickle, the effect of all of that can be enormous. Mr. John?
The 1.25 standard, the DEC is adhering to that. We had an engineering firm design a culvert under one of our roads. DEC reviewed it, that it does not meet our 1.25 standard. Now, just about all of us know of the 1.25 standard. Why that particular engineer did not know, I don't know. Was not an additional cost to the town. But the engineering firm that designed the culvert, replacement culvert, had to redesign it to meet the 1.25 standard, and they had to eat that cost. That's how they're adhering to that.
Mr. Bruno?
yeah, well, the problem comes in because if you're not the way you design and size these culverts, if you're using HEC-RAS or HydroCAD, is based on volume and a particular threshold, a 50-year storm, 100-year storm, whatever. When you run that through HydroCAD, HEC-RAS, whatever, you get a size of a culvert. And this is the point, this 1.25 bank full width changes that, can change that dramatically, where you don't get a culvert to work and you end up having to have a bridge or a different, more costly structure. So that's probably what they did. They ran it through one of those programs, and for whatever reason, they probably, like you said, they probably should have known the 1.25 criteria, but I'm sure that's what happened. And when they were faced with that, they had to go back to the drawing board, say.
They change that drainage structure in that drainage basin or in that sub-basin, that affects the whole drainage basin. Because now you're not in the volume of the water, you're not necessarily sending more volume through that, but you're sending it through a greater velocity. And now you have to go down and you have to look at, okay, well, what does this mean on down through? And because they're not all designed, as you well know, they're not all designed to 500 year. I mean, and so what happens is that to a certain degree, that culvert being restricted holds the water back at times and lets it out more slowly. Let's put it that way. Yeah, there are times it tops the road and it might wash out the road. But now you put a big culvert in there and you just send that water through there. Then the next person in line may not be able to handle that much water.
I don't want to drag it out, but a lot of this came from the DEC or the state did this Climate Resiliency Act that came out in 2014, but they didn't necessarily enforce anything until about 2017 when they started to initiate this 1.25. And basically what it's got nothing to do with the HEC-RAS. That's how we would all design our culvert pipes. It's got to do with stream degradation or fish passage or critters that can't make it across the stream, or I mean, this is what it's come to. And look, I don't want to knock DEC. I understand what they're trying to do, but you can't just arbitrarily throw something out here like this and expect us all to say, okay, we're going to jump on board with it. Now, what used to happen in the past is we had a general permit, and a general permit, any town, any county could just go, hey, we have work along our road, we're replacing culverts in kind, but nothing was ever set. It was a general permit. Now the general permit, they put all these restrictions on it. Now, you don't have to necessarily do that 1.25 width, but then you have to go to an individual permit. And when you go to the individual permit, now you're looking at 90 days review time by DEC.
Right, because they have to, that's considered a modification.
Correct.
And they have to approve it, and they may not.
So to the bottom line, I know this is a large amount of money. I don't know, and I don't want to speak for Supervisor Thomas and fund balance and where we're at. But again, I will say, and as I always have, is I can't help what happened to the culverts. We're looking at getting them assessed. And we will start replacing those as much as we can, but for the remainder of it, I need to take care of the roads.
Frank, what do you have?
Yeah, well, as long as you mention my name, I will defend myself. As far as your capital projects, I think I explained to you that I took out a certain amount of that. I left what you will need for budget for next year. It's still, and that, my intent was to come back at first of the year and tap the fund balance and put that money back. I didn't want to raise taxes to fund that money because we couldn't do it. As far as the paving part, I have an email here from our deputy treasurer, October 3rd, and at that time, you still had $3 million of approximately of money that was abandoned, that was unspent.
Yep.
So I want to know how much you had left at the end of the year.
Probably that same amount because it goes to County Route 77 Main Street and County Route 35 Diamond Point Road. Those are the two projects. And I want to add on, I'm not, what Supervisor Thomas just said, I was aware of how he did the budget last year. I was in agreement with him. And I was also in agreement that I would come back after the first year and request the funding. I'm requesting more because of the emergency work that we had.
Yeah, I don't.
I would say at this stage, if it's agreeable to the committee, that Mr. Hajos, Mr. Taplin, and Mr. Thomas, and the chairman, possibly, I'll be happy to attend if you want my attendance, should put together a financial plan to, with a dollar amount attached. And that legislation, unless you need something today, Kevin, but if you, that dollar amount and that appropriate legislation be prepared to make the appropriate transfers. I mean, there's no way that, we're gonna transfer some amount and it's gonna be sizable. But exactly what the dollar amount is, what accommodation is gonna be made with projects we were hoping to do this year that maybe we have to be put off for a year. I don't know. But whatever the plan is, the accommodation, I think it needs to be put into a plan format so the appropriate legislation can be prepared. And it needs to be advanced, I presume, to finance. It would have to be advanced to finance, whether through this committee or not. It's going to have to go to finance. It's going to be a big dollar amount. Now, I don't want to specify how big it's going to be, but it sounds it's into the millions, and it's the only funding source we have is our fund balance and our unobligated fund balance. And Mr.
But the
Bruno,
only way it does progress or get any approval is if you have a plan that people can look at and understand and know. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I just think that, we have some ongoing projects right now that we didn't fund, so that they should be the priority. The road in Johnsburg has been sitting on that drawing now for, I don't know how many years, that needs to get done. And, the paving that didn't get done last year needs to get done, needs to be a priority. And then these culverts that we're working on now need to be a priority first. And not understanding the whole process, to keep working on the other stuff. And we need to set priorities. We may have to readjust our priorities. But these culverts, as I've said, every one of my speeches, these washouts we've had are really costing us. And it's usually $1 million per job. And that's unfortunate. And as far as getting the federal dollars, I think we can appeal to other avenues to try to get some federal help. And I think we should do that. I mean, these storms have been hitting us hard lately. I just don't think we should bury our head in the sand because we don't meet a threshold for FEMA. There are other avenues we can pursue to try to get some federal dollars. So, you know.
Well, I think-
there could be some state money available.
I mean, I think I agree, I mean, I agree with you, but I think all this needs to be put on a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. We need to know, okay, we need this amount for all the emergency repair, which we may not know the exact dollar amount until those projects are completed because that, that's, based on an hourly, time and material and overhead and profit kind of, I think I'm saying it correctly. So, so we need to know for the emergency repair, that dollar amount, and then we need to know how much of what we were hoping to do in, 24, we plan to do, and then I think that needs to get put in front of the appropriate committee. And I think that there's going to be a number of parties that are going to need to look at that and sign off on that, John. And if I could count on you and Kevin to put together the involved parties to make that happen. And but if time is of the essence here, then what's the feeling of the committee that matter, once developed, be moved right along to finance? Is that agreed? Do you want it to come back here, or would you move it?
Send it to finance.
Move it right along. Is that agreeable to everyone? I think so. I don't know how many of our members are on finance here. Oh, well, so we've got at least 2 members on finance. So now we know who to blame. So,
Just a quick
Mr.
question, that
Merlino.
3 million, that's just sitting there. Can we transfer that? No. So it's the emergency stuff right now, we'll get it going.
It's, I have to look at the way that the bond was written up. It didn't spell out specifically what roads, but it did spell out that it was for road projects. These culvert projects are different.
Not considered road projects, well, okay.
There, I think the deputy treasurer may argue that point. With that being said, I didn't put it in your packages today because I wanted to make sure that we had enough. I already have the numbers done for all those projects. Now, these are estimates. But at least 2 of them, Trout Lake and Call Street, I'm pretty close with the numbers because we've already received the invoices back from our emergency contractors, but we haven't fully vetted them yet, and may be a little negotiation back and forth with those contractors. So with that being said, the other ones, Bolton Landing, Peckham's is working on that one, that 5-foot pipe that's, 20 feet down. They'd already provided us an estimate for that work last year. So I have pretty good numbers to that. As far as the one at New Vermont, I don't. And the one at Palisades, I don't. These are guesses based on historical data that we have from other work that we've done.
I think you've praised the board members of that some dollar amount of emergency repair is going to need to be acted upon. I think the consensus of the committee is that when you have that number, that it be moved right to finance. We don't need to chew up another 30 to 60 days coming through our committee because let's face it, the work is being done as we either has been done or is being done as we sit here.
The way it's presented, as you said, I think you need to first prioritize, and under that list of priorities, you need to give a little detail as to what project and an approximate cost, even if it's just
I have them all.
right.
Right.
But for the for finance or somebody looking at this, you want to be as clear as you can be.
Absolutely. And I think that if there are 24 projects that you were hoping to do, to come forward with, that it's determined need to be 25 projects, then the appropriate municipalities and supervisors need to be appraised of that. The good news is we're going to do it in 25. The bad news is we can't do it in 24. I mean, but understand that whatever you move into 25 may be bumping something that was planned for 25. So, I mean, that's what happens in the nature of this business, right? But I think that it's fair to say that the emergency work alone is going into the millions of dollars. I don't want to put a dollar amount, but it's.
It is, and the bottom line is, I don't think Supervisor Conover or Supervisor Molino have said, yeah, just shut the road down. Cause it's not gonna work. Those become the priorities, because Call Street is a main route between Queensbury and Lake Luzerne and Corinth. County Route 11 is a main route from that north way, and as Supervisor Conover said, people can take Alderbrook or they can take 9N, but most people, we're receiving the complaints in the office. When's it gonna be done? When's it gonna be done? We're pushing the contract as quickly as we can.
Yeah, no, when you look at it, if you look at it on a map, there's a reason County Route 11 is there. It's a major connector and for the region, really. People coming into the region from the north or the south, it's a big deal. All right, then. Anything else, Mr. Aegis? All right, thank you for your time. Sorry we ran over, everyone. Chair, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Bruner on the motion, Mr. Strainer on the second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.